Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 140, cover dated December 1980. And this is part two of a two-part storyline which saw Wolverine go north to Canada in order to formalize his resignation from Department H. But while there, he found himself staring at an old foe. The prospect of meeting up an old foe again, precisely the Wendigo. Fist to fist with the savage fury of Wendigo, declares the cover caption. The cover is by John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin. It is a decent enough cover. A lot of the background there, if you're looking at it in high definition or you've got a copy of this yourself, you can see there are woods in the background, but the screen tone used and the color used really kind of obscures all of that detail so that our focus is on Wendigo himself, the mother here with her baby in peril, and Wolverine, of course, being knocked around like a rag doll. So let's open this one up to the splash page, and here we have Colossus pulling up a tree stump, and the title being Rage. It's not Colossus's rage, rather it is Wolverine's later on in the story. So we've got a lot. Well, let's take a look at our creative credits actually first of all. Chris Claremont writer, John Byrne plot and pencils. So the two parts 139 and 140 are John Byrne's story. That's why he gets that plotter credit there. Terry Austin inker, Tom Orzechowski letterer, and Glynis Wine colorist rounds out the classic creative team. So it's a nice drawing of Colossus pulling up that tree stump, and then we get a little bit of dialogue because who arrives except for Angel, who has become formally a member of the new iteration of the X-Men in the absence of Cyclops, who has taken a leave of absence, and of course Jean Grey, who has killed herself in the classic 137 in order to stop the inevitable emergence of Dark Phoenix from her psyche. So here we get this little bit of dialogue between Angel and Colossus, where Angel asks Colossus rhetorically, "Are you enjoying yourself?" And Colossus responds, "It has been too long since I got my hands dirty doing the work I was born to do." "You sound homesick. Do you wish you'd stayed a farmer?" asks Angel. "Occasionally, but I know I cannot go back as an X-Man. I've seen, experienced so much, too much." So a little reference there to the Dark Phoenix saga. "My parents, my comrades would not understand," he says. Angel replies, "I know the feeling, but if that's so, why all this work?" So Colossus points to the cleared field of all the tree stumps. He says, "It relaxes me and reminds me that for all the vaunted power of Colossus, I'm still nothing compared to the power and majesty of nature. I've beheld many wonders, Warren, yet few compare with the simple beauty of a seed giving birth to a flower." And then he says, I'm sorry, I'm not expressing my thoughts, my feelings well. I've not the words." And Angel rather nicely says to him, "Pal, Shakespeare couldn't have said it better." And then Angel gets a telepathic call from the professor. So he makes his way back to the X-Mansion and alights there. I like the detail of the shadow that he's casting. And the professor says to him, "I was wondering about your reactions to your fellow X-Men now that you've had a chance to work and train beside them." And Angel says he's no problems with any of them except for Wolverine. And so Angel explains, "He's crazy, you know, and dangerous. Suppose he goes berserk in a fight and kills someone with those freaky claws of his." And now the professor gives a nice speech regarding why it is there's a place for Wolverine among the X-Men. He says, "All my adult life, I've tried to help mutants come to terms with themselves and the society around them, to teach Homo sapiens and Homo superior to live together in peace and harmony, for better or worse. That includes Wolverine. I may fail, but I must at least make the attempt." So Claremont working into the dialogue and script here, a rumination on Wolverine throughout this two-parter in terms of whether he's making any progress in taming the dark beast shadow side of himself. And then the scene switches to Salem Center, and Storm is walking along the street and she gets bothered by this guy who invites her to the local disco, and she says to him, "Now as before, I think not. why won't you take no for an answer, as she conjures up a little rain cloud over him and soaks him with his hip gear for 1980 at the very least. And he says, I'm soaking wet. Where'd that storm come from? Call it magic, she says. She smiles, and as casually as she created the miniature thunder shower, Storm makes it go away. So why is she in Salem Center? She's there to pick up Kitty Pryde, who has now had her dance lesson with Stevie Hunter. That was all introduced in the previous issue. And Storm is a little on edge. She says, there's Kitty and her new dance teacher, Stevie. They seem to be getting along famously. She thinks this to herself. That shouldn't bother me, but it does. I've been on edge since the moment we met. I keep telling myself such feelings are absurd. Stevie is one of the nicest women I've ever met, yet the feelings remain. And so, readers trained on superhero comics would be wondering, well, is Stevie Hunter going to be revealed to be some kind of villain? And it's not that at all. That's what's so interesting here from Claremont. Really what it turns out to be is Storm is jealous. When Stevie says here, our kitten has real talent, Ororo, once we smooth down her considerable rough edges, Storm thinks to herself, our kitten? And then Kitty phases into the limousine, and Storm says, what do you think you're doing, flaunting your power like that? Suppose someone sees you. So Kitty apologizes, says it's fun, and Storm says, I know, little one, but please be more careful. And then Kitty picks up on the fact that Storm is a little edgy, and she says, Ororo, are you feeling all right? You're on an awfully short fuse all of a sudden, is it me? And Storm thinks to herself, goddess, the child is perceptive. And then she kind of smooths it over. No, kitten, it's not you. I'm concerned for Wolverine and Nightcrawler. So we get our transition to Canada with that. But really interesting stuff here. Claremont really working on the emotional aspects of the characters, the tensions and possibilities of the different emotional relationships, and Storm having developed already a maternal concern for Kitty and feeling jealous about Stevie as a rival. So as I said, we transition to what's become of Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and this really picks up from the cliffhanger at the end of the previous issue where Nightcrawler was attacked by Wendigo. So a nice big anchor image here of him leaping away from Wendigo's claws. That was too close for comfort, he thinks. Now, one of the characteristics of comics from this era, the Jim Shooter editor-in-chief era, is that one of his dictates is every comic could be someone's first. So you get a lot of exposition in thought balloons, which really fill in readers for whom this is the first issue, what happened in the previous one. So we're not going to go through all of that. Really what speaks most eloquently here on these pages is the fight choreography in John Byrne's pencils. Really, really well done as Nightcrawler leaps away from Wendigo, smashing up the woods there. And the reason that he doesn't teleport away is he can only teleport to within spaces that he knows very well, because otherwise he might teleport accidentally into the middle of a tree, let's say. So he climbs up one of these trees. I really like that three-quarter profile shot of his face there, his glowing eyes, most of him in silhouette, because that's one of the aspects of Nightcrawler that often is forgotten, that he, because of his coloration, he can hide in shadows. It's almost like a secondary mutant power or ability. But Wendigo smashes the tree, so Nightcrawler falls out and then he grabs him. Now he's in trouble. Wendigo is there pressing on his chest. Only hope, focus, concentration, ignore pain. But it's so hard. I hurt so much, he thinks, but I must. And then he finally teleports. So he teleports up, which is up into the sky. But that's a nice panel there. So let's get past these advertisements and we see exactly. He's teleported way up into the sky and then back down to the ground. And he's thinking to himself, aha, there's a clearing. It's a far piece from Wendigo 2. With luck, I'll have given him the slip. I should be able to get back to the cabin and warn the others. No such luck. So this is another great panel here. DeLuca effect as well. Nightcrawler bouncing, leaping. Remember, he was in the circus in Bavaria, all around Wendigo there. But once again, he's caught and knocked towards the cabin precisely like a cannonball, as Claremont's third-person exposition makes plain. And within the cabin, we've got Vindicator, Wolverine, we have Shaman, and Snowbird. And Wolverine here is talking about their plan to go, his plan to go hunting for Wendigo, in the hopes that the abducted Mrs. Parnell and her baby might still be alive, because the Wendigo prefers fresh killed meat. So Wolverine figures he may be keeping them alive. And just at that point, Nightcrawler hits the side of the cabin. So Wolverine goes out, sees Nightcrawler out cold, and immediately, at Wolverine's mental command, retractable razor-keen adamantium claws pop out of the back of his hands. They're forged of the strongest metal known to man and are capable of cutting solid steel as easily as paper. So we got to have something like that every single issue in the Jim Shooter era of comics. But if you look at Claremont's comics today, what he's putting out in more recent years, you don't get that kind of exposition anymore, which clears up the pages from all the verbiage. Tonight, the shortest, feistiest X-Man is going to need them. I do like that. I do like the phrasing in that particular caption. So, Wendigo's picking up the pickup truck like it was a toy. So he's getting ready to throw it there, and Vindicator attacks him using his battle suit. And I like the thought balloon that Claremont has given him, bringing a bit of drama to things. Lord help me, praise Vindicator. I'm scared. I never realized Wendigo would be so big. So that kind of humanizes him. And he manages to blast and turn to slag the pickup truck. But Wendigo grabs another tree and decides to indulge in some impromptu batting practice. And his first target is Vindicator himself. So a lot of action in this second part of the story. That was something that John Byrne always wanted and was pushing against Claremont for more action in the stories, and we're getting it here. Really like the DeLuca effect there of Snowbird transforming into a great Arctic owl, rushing to Vindicator's aid. Wolverine here is getting ready to attack Wendigo with his claws. And Shaman tells him, you go after him, Wolverine, I'll follow when I can, because he's using his shaman powers here to put out the fire, because he's concerned about the whole woods going up in flame, and that would be difficult to stop. So Wendigo flees. And Vindicator says, I'm fine, Snowbird. The only thing hurt was my pride. Take Wolverine and follow the Wendigo. Shaman and I will be along as soon as we've extinguished the fire. So now Wolverine is out in the woods, and this is an interesting little combination here of Wolverine and Snowbird tracking Wendigo together, and Wolverine thinking here, that sucker ain't as dumb as he looks, or as he used to be in the old days. Wendigo would generally leave a Hulk-sized trail behind him. Now he's moving through the forest like he was a part of it, and he's doing a pretty good job of covering his tracks. So Wendigo now a more elusive prey. Snowbird joins him and says to him that she can see nothing from the air. We're going to have to do this the hard way, he says to her in reply, on foot and one step at a time. And this is really interesting. Claremont has Snowbird say to Wolverine, Wolverine, I do not like you very much. I love his reply, thanks. Just a simple thanks, an ironic thanks. And she continues and she says, but I cannot deny that you're a good leader. Why did you resign from Department H? And you know, that's what Professor X said earlier about Wolverine. He saw leader potential in Wolverine, and Snowbird sees it too. So Wolverine says, you know, to her question, why did you resign from Department H? I got a better offer. So cue a flashback here, and always the device used to indicate flashback panels in Marvel Comics of this era is the curved edge of the panel. So you see it there in these three. And this is really interesting stuff. You know, it is as far back as we go with Wolverine's origins in this era. He flashes back to across the years, remembering how James and Heather Hudson found him near their home in the Canadian Rockies, sick, frozen, starving, as near death as a body could be. Now, we never discovered in Claremont's writing of the character what led Wolverine to that point, But in 1991, Barry Windsor Smith with Weapon X precisely told the story of what led Wolverine to be sick, frozen, starving, as near death as a body could be, and then picked up by James and Heather Hudson. So they nursed him back to health, accepted him, loved him, and he loved them in return, but still there were strains. So Wolverine, an angry man at the time. You don't understand, Mac, he says. You've never understood. I've always been a dangerous man, scrapping second nature to me, but these claws, this flaming adamantium skeleton I've got, change everything. As far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as a fair fight anymore. I'm virtually invulnerable, Mac, he says. I've been turned into a killing machine, and I don't like it. So he slams the door and off he goes. To the Canadian Secret Service, he was a gift from heaven. They turned him loose on all the dirty, brutal, necessary assignments no one else would touch. And he never forgave them for what they did to him and then made him do. And when Charles Xavier offered him a way out, he took it. So one little thing I like here in Terry Austin's inking is the way he's inked in the shadow on the floor there, and kind of giving us a sense of the shag of the carpet there, the threads in the carpet. I think that's really, really well done. So back to the story. This is a really well composed panel too, as Snowbird and Wolverine covertly observe and surveil Wendigo. They've tracked him to his lair. He's got some bones there on the ground that he's gnawing on, but he's going to get hungry again soon. I really like the way that Snowbird's cloak there kind of follows the arch of her back and around her posterior and leg. It's really, really well done. Drapery is difficult to do, and Byrne is doing a very good job there. So Wolverine tells her, you bring back Mac and the others pronto, I'll maintain surveillance. And she asks a little testily, why should I go? And Wolverine responds, because I can't fly, dummy, and speed is what's important. Now scoot. So off she goes. And Wendigo at this point pulls back a huge rock covering a little cave. And inside is the missing mother and child. So Wolverine knows he's got to act now. The reinforcements ain't going to arrive in time, he thinks. If Mrs. Parnell's going to be rescued, I'll have to do the job myself, and that suits me fine. I've been aching for a rematch with the Wendigo. So he leaps. And now we're going to get the fight that we have been waiting for in this issue, and it is the rematch, a rematch between Wolverine and Wendigo that goes all the way back to Incredible Hulk 181. So 4 nice big panels here, and in the narrative captions we learn from Claremont that Wolverine is going into a berserker fury. He becomes fury personified, a grim, unstoppable engine of destruction. The pace isn't human. He feels a berserker rage build within him, the equivalent of days of non-stop combat compressed into a matter of minutes. And through it all, Wolverine denies pain, denies fatigue, denies everything but the will to win. So Wolverine there thinks, it's difficult going. He thinks any other foe would have been smashed to a pulp or cut into shish kebab by now, but Wendigo's the best thing to invulnerable. I can hurt him temporarily and stun him, but no more than that, no matter how hard I try, and I am trying real hard. So this is a situation, Wolverine wanted to go to Canada on his own to sort his business with Department H. But really, this is a situation where he needs to be part of a team in order to best Wendigo. And let's continue with the story and see how things develop. He gets Wendigo down, and he's down and out. Finally, my adrenaline surge, my patented berserker rage, he thinks to himself, is fading fast. Been a long time since I felt this pooped. Can't fall though, not till I get the lady and her kid out of harm's way. So that's Wolverine the hero. So he calls over to her, can you travel? The sooner we're away from here, the better. I can't guarantee how long Shaggy will stay in Slumberland. So she says she can walk, so they start stumbling away. And she asks about her son, and Wolverine tells her, Tommy's fine, he's in the hospital. And she responds, thank God, but Wolverine thinks to himself, that's only part of the truth. But how do I tell her that boy's that the boy's in catatonic shock, almost a kind of living death. And then he's blindsided from behind. The Wendigo snuck up on him while he was distracted with his thoughts, grabs him. This looks potentially like a bad situation he's in, like Wendigo could snap his back. And he just simply slams him on the ground. And in the narrative captions we learn Wolverine's unbreakable adamantium skeleton saves him from instant death. But Wendigo starts smashing him into the tree trunk there, and just at that point Nightcrawler arrives, cracks Wendigo in the jaw with a tree branch. Nice try, Wendigo, but no Cupid doll, he says. I learned the hard way how fast you moved. You'll have to do a lot better than this to catch me now. So he calls out to Vindicator. So we're getting a team effort here in order to tackle Wendigo, and that's what it's going to take to deal with him. So Vindicator arrives, blasts him with his battle suit, grabs Nightcrawler too, and now Shaman is arriving. And Shaman is the one who is going to be, who needs to be in a position to cast a shamanic spell that will revert the Wendigo to his human form. But he says he's too strong. My magic can't even bind him, much less cure him while he's conscious. So Snowbird picks up and says, physical force can overwhelm him. The Hulk and Wolverine proved it. And Shaman responds, Wolverine's out cold, Snowbird, and the Hulk isn't available. True, she says, but perhaps I can shape change into the next best thing. So this is classic Claremont. You think that someone like Snowbird isn't going to have a shot at a hulking figure like Wendigo, but because of her power of metamorphosis, she is going to be able to transmute into an animal that may have a chance against Wendigo. But the kind of like the rub is that that whatever the emotions or the instincts of the animal she transforms into are, they take over her own psyche. So she's concerned about it. She transforms this time into a being who appears human but who in truth is not, from an exotically beautiful young woman into a white Wolverine. Okay, so now we're going to get the animal that Wolverine is named after attacking Wendigo. Gram for gram, Claremont's narrative captions inform us, it is said that no animal on Earth matches a Wolverine's ferocity or indomitable will. Logan, the X-Man Wolverine, is the closest avatar of this small, incredibly deadly wood beast. But Snowbird has become the real thing, and between the two of them, there's no comparison. So she starts savaging Wendigo there, going for his throat, I feel. And everybody's just watching in kind of mixed horror, except for Wolverine there. Well, he is aghast because he's concerned about Snowbird and what she's done to herself. What have you done? So this is a great panel here where we see her face there in shadow and just the teeth and the shining eyes, and she's ripped open Wendigo. When it is over, Wendigo lies unconscious, the darkling spell that created him already healing his fearsome wounds. In a matter of hours he will be as good as new, but by then Shaman will have had a chance to cast his counterspell. But what about Snowbird? He steps forward only to freeze in his tracks as the Snowbird Wolverine, this is Wolverine steps forward, as the Snowbird Wolverine bares her teeth and warns him away from her prey. And look, it's a Glynis Oliver trope, a red background for a violent scene. So Shaman says, she's still a Wolverine. The animal persona must have taken over. My changeling spell will work as well on Snowbird as on Wendigo. But Wolverine gestures to him to keep back. No, he says, she'll fight you physically and psychically. You could be left so wasted you won't be able to heal the Wendigo, and then all the pain and grief would have been for nothing. Leave Annie to me, says Wolverine. So he goes right up to face this snarling Wolverine beast. And this is real kind of psychodrama where it's as if he's looking in the mirror and he's been working on himself over the course of the past number of years, and this is really the moment where we see Wolverine developing even further, getting more control of the beast within. No violence, no fear. I've got to reach Annie with words and emotions, he thinks to himself, just like Scott reached Jean Grey when she'd be consumed by Dark Phoenix. I ain't good at talking. Every instinct in me wants to fight her, to prove my own strength and superiority by smashing her into submission. But that's the wrong way. I won't do that. And this really proves the Professor's faith in Wolverine, that he's right to have faith in him, that he can change and develop. So Logan starts talking, and it looks like he succeeds between this panel and this panel. He isn't aware of how long he talks, or indeed of precisely what he says. In a sense, he bears his soul to her, reaching out with as wild and free a passion as her own. And then with a blood-curdling scream, the Snowbird Wolverine responds. Looks like it's going to attack him, but it transforms into Snowbird. And she's so grateful to him, and he just comforts her and says, hush, hush, I know how you feel. You'll be okay now, though. You've gone through the valley, faced the worst parts of yourself and triumphed. It'll never be as rough again. They move apart from the others, their words as private as the emotions they struggle to express. That's Claremont just adding more and more layers of emotional sophistication and characterization to what you simply get in Byrne's art here. And we're coming towards the end now. We're getting to the wrap up, where I really like this panel showing us this, like kind of, it's kind of permadawn in the far north, and but it's technically night. He spends the rest of the night shaman preparing himself for the ordeal to come. By dawn he's ready, and so the spell is cast, and the Wendigo, the woods beast, becomes before their eyes a man again. And so Shaman is wrecked after all the effort. Snowbird congratulates him, and this is kind of funny in a way, but also there's a kind of an ethical, moral point to it. George Baptiste asks Vindicator, yes, am I truly free? He asks, of my curse, is my nightmare at last ended? And Vindicator says, I'm afraid not, you're under arrest. So the guy is shocked, and then we get an explanation from Vindicator. I know arresting Baptiste sounds cruel and heartless, but I had no choice. He became Wendigo of his own free will. Under Canadian law, that renders him culpable for any crimes he committed as Wendigo. The courts shouldn't be too hard on him, though. His acts were those of an insane man, and his memories of what he did are a far worse punishment than a lifetime stretch in prison. Now, how does this map onto Wolverine himself? Nightcrawler is listening there, and once Alpha Flight have gone, he's got a few questions for Wolverine, moral questions for Wolverine. But I also want to point out here Snowbird, and Claremont gives her the thought balloon. Will I see Wolverine again? Who can say? I do I wish to? Yes, she says. So Claremont kind of seeding there, maybe a little kind of romantic possibility there between Snowbird and Wolverine, whereas it was Nightcrawler, in prospect of going to Canada, who was looking forward to meeting Snowbird. So away they go, Alpha Flight, and Nightcrawler says, looking at George Baptiste, mein Freund, I can't help thinking, there but for the grace of God goes you. So he's really putting it up to Wolverine. How so? Asks Wolverine. Baptiste, as Wendigo, killed. Now he must pay the price. And you, Wolverine, should you not pay a price as well? So Wolverine's got an answer for him. Kurt, in my life, I've been two things, a wartime soldier and a secret agent. As one, my government paid me to kill. As the other, they licensed me to kill. I was very good at both jobs. They liked that, and I got the medals and commendations to prove it. Perhaps, but Nightcrawler interrupts, and Wolverine says, I ain't finished yet, bub. A man comes at me with his fists, I'll meet him with fists. But if he pulls a gun or threatens people I'm protecting, then I got no sympathy for him. He made his choice, he'll have to live or die with it. I never used my claws on someone who hadn't tried to kill me first. I call that self-defense. So Wolverine very much lex talionis, like the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, the law of retaliation when it comes to morality. But Nightcrawler, who has recently been revealed in Uncanny X-Men Annual number 4 to be Catholic, has a different perspective. I understand, Logan, what you say is reasonable, logical, justifiable, but does that make it right? So Nightcrawler has got that different moral ethos of praying for one's enemy, forgiving one's enemy, loving one's neighbor as oneself, and so on and so forth. A completely different ethos and moral principle than Wolverine's eye for an eye, matching force with force, fighting fire with fire. So intriguing little moral debate and discussion there. And Claremont, you know, even though what would we say, like the scene has changed, Claremont just continues in the narrative caption by informing us, and the few times he does speak Wolverine during their leisurely meander, a vacation by any other name, home, his tone is thoughtful. Nightcrawler's words, his final question, struck deep. So Wolverine's characterization continues. Then the scene switches to the Parliament building in Ottawa, and Vindicator reports to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister says, there's no easy way to say this. I'm afraid Department H and Alpha Flight are being disbanded. So Wolverine came up to Canada in order to make good his resignation from Department H. And the irony is Department H is being disbanded. Times are hard. Money is in short supply, says the Prime Minister. The House felt that superheroes were a luxury the federal government could no longer afford. Many members, like their constituents, have never felt entirely comfortable with the idea of super beings. The current anti-mutant sentiment in the United States is a good example of that. This is really interesting stuff from Claremont, because Claremont now is taking this children's comic even further and putting real-world considerations on the question of mutants in the world. You know, how would governments respond? He's really pushing beyond the conventions of Silver Age superhero comics here in a scene like this. And this is also set up for the next issue, Days of Future Past as well, where again you get that reflection and incorporation of the political dimension of mutants in the Marvel universe, and when things go wrong in a very dystopian future for them that follows on from their genocide. The Prime Minister says the genie's out of the bottle, Pandora's box is open, we must live with this reality as best we can, if for no other reason than that we have no other choice. I'm sorry, James, I will give you an Alpha Flight what aid I can. You can keep your security clearances and your status as RCMP, the Mounties Auxiliaries. I wish I could do more. So now Alpha Flight, they have the security clearances, but they're an independent operation. I know, sir, don't worry though, we'll manage somehow. We've worked and fought too hard to chuck everything now. So Vindicator exits the Prime Minister's office, his shoulders slumped, an ending of sorts, yet also a beginning of a new, possibly brighter chapter in the life of Alpha Flight. And a couple of years in the future, John Byrne would launch an Alpha Flight title, written and drawn by him. And then we get our epilogue here. There's 22 pages of story in this particular issue, and this is our one-page epilogue, but it is a prologue really to the next issue. And speaking of endings and beginnings, let's shift our scene far to the southwest of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, to the slate grey eminence of the United States Federal Maximum Security Penitentiary, located on the desolate outskirts of Deming, New Mexico. Here are incarcerated the creme de la creme of the world's supervillains, some of the deadliest criminals in human history. Like all prisons, it's supposed to be escape-proof, and for the most part it is. But of course, that's just basically set up for one of these prisoners escaping. And who is it? Well, it's a long-time X-Men villain, Fred J. Dukes, aka the Blob, and erstwhile member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And so he has collapsed the cell around himself, and he reveals in his dialogue here, that implosion stunt that my lady lawyer taught me is pretty nifty. Looks like she's worth trusting after all. She said transportation would be waiting outside the prison. All I had to do was make it outside on my own. An entrance exam, she called it, to see if I was good enough to join the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Well, I am, babe, he exclaims, as you and the entire world are going to find out. So in the very next issue, we will get our first look at the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, led by Mystique. There you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 140. Let me know your thoughts on this issue in the comment section to the video. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like the video in YouTube and consider sharing it. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.